Okay, let's get started in the meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 9:03. And let's have a roll call, please.
Sam Vincent,
Here.
John Colapetro,
Here.
Linda Schwartz,
Here.
Jeff Maturo,
He's excused.
Rex Sims,
Here.
Robert Bornstein.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get started here with the appointment of a deputy chairman. Do I have any volunteers? Don't everyone run up at once.
That leaves you.
Chairman and deputy chair, right? That's Don?
Yes.
Huh? You've done this before.
Yes, I have. And I don't mind, but I'm going to be gone for several meetings. So.
Okay, that leaves one of you.
Yeah, I'm also going to be gone for a while.
Meeting's over.
No. I just came on. Come on.
It was nothing to it until the chairman's not in, so. Okay, you accept the deputy chair?
With much reservation.
Okay, so.
All you have to do is conduct the meeting.
Yeah, that's it next. Okay,
We'll need a motion in a second on that.
let me motion.
I'll make a motion.
Who's second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion carried.
Thanks a lot.
You get no pay for this now. First, I'd like to read into the log here an amendment to Bennu Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 2, Administration, Chapter 3, Development Standards, Chapter 4, Zoning, Chapter 5, Historic Preservation, and Chapter 6, Signs, to address internal inconsistencies and clarify standards as a result of the adoption of the Downtown Form-Based Code for the Downtown District, providing for conflicts of law, severability, and codification, Scrivener's errors, and modifications that may arise from consideration at public hearing and effective date. John?
Morning, Board, Mr. Chairman. From time to time, as we enforce our standards, we begin to learn a couple of things, whether it's there needs to be some additional clarity or there needs to be new standards for what we have. We like to learn from those and bring those standards forward and try to incorporate those in our land development code. The two amendments that you have before you today are examples of that. And what we're looking to do is to provide a little more clarity and define a little bit better some ordinances that really aren't very old. Our old 41 standards and our beach road standards. And these should be very quick. There's not a lot to these. They're basically to fill in some gaps of things that we've noticed as people have come in and we've had to apply this code in certain ways. So Mike Fegon is here to provide you a brief description of both of these, but that's all it is. We're really looking at a quick change to help us enforce this.
Yeah, I can still hear. I can still hear. Yeah.
Good morning. Mike Fegon with
Morning.
Community Development for the record. As John had said, a lot of these changes are relatively minor. In fact, we've been calling it the glitch bill in the office, mainly because we have this new form-based code. It's about 6 months old now. It's been out there for a little bit, and as that happens, you kind of start to see how it kind of moves and shakes in the development community and when it's actually applied on the ground. So there are a few inconsistencies, which is quite normal for new codes such as this to go ahead and come back and clarify and address. Most of the changes are relatively minor. For an example, scattered throughout the land development code are references to the old 41 redevelopment overlay, and that's what the downtown district was called before the form-based code came out. So essentially removing those references, replacing them with downtown district. Minor things like that is what we're talking about. There were also a few areas where there was some duplications, and that's the other facet that John was talking about, is to try and clarify certain areas throughout the land development code and make things much more clear and concise. So when you have duplicative language or you have two standards that don't quite match up, you want to go ahead and get that addressed. And this is just an example of that happening. Another one of the changes was we wanted to clarify the applicability section for the downtown district. So make it a bit more clear when this code applies and at what point when it comes to existing structures having to make certain form-based changes to come into compliance with this form-based code. And the fact that we were able to make these changes, I think, speaks to one of the things that DPZ spoke about when going over this form-based code, which is you're able to calibrate it in various ways to what is necessary for you in your jurisdiction at that time. So the fact that we're able to make these changes is just another example of us being able to calibrate this code to make it do what it needs to do, which is to be effective. Another example would be on the commercial use table within the downtown district in Chapter 4. Obviously, one of the facets of the form-based code was to kind of get away from uses overall and focus more on the form, the site design, the functionality, things of that nature. But there still is a use table, and we still do have a land development code that is very use heavy. So there were certain things we wanted to make sure were addressed. For example, there are certain uses that require specific setback regulations from residential properties and things of that nature. We wanted to go ahead and carry some of those standards into the downtown area, and it wasn't in the previous version of the code. So that's an example of one of the changes that we made. Another change that we made is that in the previous version of the form-based code, it mentions it mentions criteria for bonus density, but the criteria wasn't laid out incredibly clear. So we went ahead and clarified that and made it a bit more clear so that these developers know what it takes to get bonus density in their given transect for downtown. Another example would be signage, and this actually came out of a joint effort with the city attorney's office and neighborhood services. They were reviewing the sign portion of the downtown district code, and it became quite clear and evident to them that there was going to be some enforcement issues. And again, that plays to the effectiveness of the code. If you have a difficulty and you have a difficult time enforcing it, what good is the code really at that point? So we worked very closely with them to make certain changes to make it a bit more enforceable. A lot of it ties back to the existing sign code that we have already in Chapter 6. So making some of the reference points match, making some of the sections match, some of the size standards match, that way it becomes universal for the entire city. It just led to a much clearer, concise, easier to digest code. And again, this form-based code overall was such a huge shift. In order to do it justice, you want it to be reader-friendly, you want it to be user-friendly in terms of the ability to digest the information. So a lot of these clarifying points are done in an effort to achieve that end. And finally, one of the last things we did with the form-based code is the color palette somehow was inadvertently removed from the previous version. There's references to it all over the place, so it was just putting it back in. That's an example of one of the glitches that this was designed to deal with. So that's my summary of the first bullet point here, item A, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Everyone here understands form-based code, the new code? Okay, good.
Great. So I guess we'll move on to item B.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me read this in. An amendment to the Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 4, zoning, to clarify language in properties zoned plan or properties zoned plan development. They want to voluntarily develop and or redevelop under the Bonita Beach Road Corridor Overlay District standards, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, and modifications that may arise from consideration at public hearing and an effective date. You can continue.
And before we get going on this, you do need to vote on item A in terms of if it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. If you'd want to do that now, or if you want to wait and do them together as two separate motions, you can do that after I go over the item B. It's your choice.
Let's do it together. I think.
Okay. So item B, again, very, very simply laid out in the code, is that we have many projects that are zoned planned development, which is a custom zoning district within the city that has its own set of development regulations, setbacks, uses, environmental criteria, things of that nature. And no two planned development zoning districts are the same. But one of the things that we wanted to sort of deal with in this is that we have a lot of planned development zoning districts that are within one of our overlay districts throughout the city. In this particular case, we're talking about the Bonita Beach Road corridor. And elsewhere in other overlays, we have language in there about these planned developments having the opportunity to voluntarily comply and develop their project in conformance with the overlay standards instead of what was approved in the planned development. Again, the overlay is designed to be a holistic, sort of all-encompassing approach. So when you have these pockets that are kind of developing differently, it kind of doesn't lend to that nice cohesive approach that you're looking for. And there wasn't any language to give them the opportunity to go ahead and develop in conformance with the overlay. Instead, they would have to come back, do an amendment, have a vote. It was becoming a very cumbersome process. So in other overlay districts, we already have this language existing. It just made sense to add it to the Bonita Beach Road overlay as well, and that's what it is.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. In regard to existing properties within any of the districts, but most particularly downtown district, I know that the attitude of the city is leave and let them live as they are. So many good things are going to happen in the city within the next few years, I would hope. Yet there are still some properties that are existing in the downtown area and in the Bonita Beach area that are almost a blight on Bonita Springs. We have businesses such as a certain ice cream parlor or a floral shop that are nice to look at. The parking areas are nice. It's a pleasure to see them. The owners of that property take care of their property. Other properties are not taken care of. And as I said, they are a blight, and it's almost impossible to draw people who wish to spend some time walking the streets, spending some money in the areas, to do so without feeling this is not such a nice place to walk or shop. What are we going to do about that?
That's a very good question, and that goes back to, going back to bullet point A, one of the things that we changed was the applicability standards. So to make it a little bit more clear when this code kicks in, that was something that the previous version didn't explain very well. So now you have a different standard that helps determine when this code kicks in, as far as really what we're talking about is exterior changes. So whether it's you have the ability now to, if they want to come into paint, they now have to paint to the color palette, but in addition to that, maybe they have to add an awning or something like that. There's this sort of menu of effects that takes place, if you will, once this code kicks in that we didn't have before. On top of that, we still do have a property maintenance code, which goes back to neighborhood services and their enforcement capabilities to be able to enforce certain property maintenance standards. And so now that we have the combination of those two things working a bit more in tandem and a bit more cohesive because of this, I think we'll start to see some of those changes take place.
Are you saying that there will be an aggressive approach to this, or are you saying, well, if this property owner wants to make the change, we'll help them do it a little bit easier, but if they don't want to make the change, what are you going to do? It depends on the issue. There is no sweeping standard in that regard, because you have certain elements of the property maintenance code, for an example, keeping your grass cut, keeping trash out of your front yard, which has nothing to do with the form-based code, so to speak. But that's the starting point. So from there, once you're able to get certain compliance in certain things, it's sort of designed to have a somewhat snowball effect, if you will, that wasn't apparent in the previous version of the code. So it's not necessarily that it's overly aggressive, it just makes it a bit more feasible than it was before. But unless the city is aggressive in some form or other, you're not going to have the changes made that have existed there for decades, if not a century.
So another one of the examples as to how this could work is, when you're talking about maximizing a property, if you will, or what you can do on a property, it is good to be able to provide some type of incentive to be able to get a property owner to maximize the use of their property. So, for example, in a lot of the downtown area, one of the things we brought up before was the ability to achieve a higher density on your property. We didn't have any standards to be able to effectuate that in the previous version of the code. So we had this language in there about, well, you can maximize your property by getting additional density, which is great for sales and marketing or whatever you want to do with your property, but there wasn't a standard set to be able to do that. Now that we have these standards, and these standards are relatively user-friendly, I think that's an example of how we can get a property owner to be able to maximize the use of their property. There are other sort of smaller examples kind of sprinkled throughout the code. But again, this wasn't designed to be a full-scale change in this particular version. This was meant to address the internal inconsistencies and some of the glitches that this code had with other sections of the land development code. I think what you're saying is a very strong point and has merit, but again, keeping in mind, this code is still very much in its infancy. It's less than 6 months old. So giving it time to work, and I could say as a community development planner, as well as the rest of staff here, the amount of interest that we've had for property downtown with existing property owners who are curious now what they can do with their property because of this code, the interest has completely skyrocketed. We're getting calls from property owners that we've never spoken to before. And I think that lends to what you're talking about some of these people that are just kind of hanging out in the background. Now they're a little bit more excited about what's going on, and they want to be able to participate. And this code makes it easier for that to occur.
Is there an aggressive approach by either your department, code enforcement, or the city itself in aggressively updating these changes? Do you go by with your bully pulpit and say, hey, this is what we're going to do, knock, knock, here's what we're going to help you with?
That happened when this code was originally being drafted. When this code was being drafted and it was going through the public hearing process, there were numerous, I guess we call them charrettes, if you will, with the downtown business owners and downtown residents, and they were able to participate in the creation of this code. So they were able to participate in what many of these standards ended up being. And the simple fact is, they're the ones that have to live and breathe in that downtown area every day. So there's the sense that they know what's best. They know what works. They know what doesn't work. They know where the issues are. So they were brought in to participate when this code was initially created, and that was largely what was passed back in November.
Again, that's downtown.
Yes.
Bonita Beach Road is the road for Bonita Springs. That's where everybody not living in Bonita Springs has their first contact with Bonita Springs, especially going up to the Gulf. That can't be forgotten either. And there's patches along Bonita, Bonita Springs Road, Bonita Beach Road, that really need some upgrading also.
Yep, the same thing occurred for Bonita Beach Road. When that overlay was redone, again by the same firm that did your form-based code for downtown, the same thing happened. Charrettes were had, business owners were brought in to discuss what works, what doesn't work, what were some of their concerns of the previous versions of the code versus what they're able to do now. And the Bonita Beach Road code has the same tone in the sense that it was made to be a lot more user-friendly and a lot more clear for what your options are. But again, as far as the ability to force an owner to be able to do certain things, you're sort of walking a little bit of a legal line there in terms of property rights and whatnot. But we've similar to the form-based code, we've carried the idea of incentivizing these changes and trying to make them a bit more feasible. And similar to the downtown area, we've had the same excitement, if you will, along Bonita Beach Road now, And a part of that goes back to making the standards just more clear and concise, and maybe opening up the table a little bit more, if you will, for what you're able to do with your property, instead of keeping it so narrow and pigeonholed, which is what the previous code was essentially doing. So as a result of that, we do expect a lot of these things to start getting corrected.
Thank you.
I think the point being that in government, everything moves slowly. So you're not going to see a lot of change immediately with the existing owners. So we have to kind of muddle through this, but we do have a good form-based code, same with Bonita Beach Road and US 41, that puts us in the right direction. I think it helps community development out a lot with the zoning aspect of this too.
I just hope the results are as anticipated.
You know, I think they will be. I've been using the form-based code for my reviews, and haven't had really any problems whatsoever. The architects, the owners have really complied with what we wanted to do, so I think that's going to be very successful.
Item B that we discussed here, I think we were involved at by Hunter's Ridge several years ago. He was 50% or so developed under the old system and wanted to start again and was involved in the new system. We had some issues there, and this will clarify that.
Any comments, questions, responses? Well, I guess we should have a motion to accept both A and B this morning.
So move.
Do I hear a motion?
So move.
I'll second.
Okay. It's accepted. Can I have a roll call on that?
Sam Vincent,
Aye, and yes.
Don Colapetro,
Yes.
Linda Schwartz,
Yes.
Rex Sims,
Yes.
Robert Bornstein.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Community development, great job.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, and there's also the minutes, Mr. Chair, for approval.
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
What is that?
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
I have a comment.
Okay.
An item or bullet just before public comment. I had made some comments and questions and concerns to the developer about the transportation on Bonita Beach Road and Terry. And right now I have even more concern. Yesterday I was on that road for literally a minute and a half going from Bonita Beach Road to Terry on Bonita Grand, and I counted 17 dump trucks in that time period. Coming here this morning, there were 7 dump trucks on that one road. With construction and then the ultimate transportation of the residents and the customers to the businesses that will be there, that's going to be an impossible road to travel on. And I thought I made, or at least I approved it, with the proviso that they committed to a change in that road pattern of some sort. And I had spoke to the developer afterward, and he said, well, I'll try. We'll come, we'll talk. That's not an answer to me. I think that road is going to be totally impossible to travel on.
John, do you want to comment?
As it turns out, you're not the first person to notice that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Collier County DOT, Lee County DOT, and the city are talking right now about what the options are. And I think everybody has their own opinion as to what should happen. So now it's just a matter of working out those opinions. And I don't know what the end result will be, but I know that everybody has taken notice, and there are discussions that have already been taking place. So no promises on a result, just that I'm sure some resolution is going to happen.
Well, John, would you say that that has an upside and downside? The upside is construction. Things are happening. People are building.
Absolutely.
The downside is it's a problem for the drivers.
The upside is obviously when dump trucks are on the road, our economy is moving.
Yes.
The downside is that we're also on the same roads.
Well, I'd just like that my concerns reflected in the minutes appropriately. Debbie, if you would, thank you.
And since I haven't adjourned yet, so that's going to be okay, right?
Yes.
You need a vote on the minutes. You need a vote on the minutes.
Oh, I think we did, and you seconded it, right?
Yes,
A
we-
vote on the minutes?
Yes, we had a vote.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
I move we adjourn.
I second that, and we adjourn.